Donald Trump got impeached for his Ukraine Plan A and the economy went down the tubes, thanks to his failure to deal with the coronavirus. Because, listen, I'm terrified at the idea that Donald Trump could be the President of the United States. Remember, Donald Trump's Plan A for re-election was to get Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, and then to use that to go after him. This is the thing Donald Trump is doing. He may be an embarrassment, but what he's actually doing is reflecting back on Republicans exactly what their positions are. You cannot avoid controversy in this day and age. You really only can pick sides. But I started out as a comedian doing sketch work where you get to write, produce, and direct your own stuff. I mean, the conservative movement in this country has been selling a pack of lies for a long time. My theory about LA is that it's almost like you have an allergy that's dormant and just need to be put in the right context for that allergy to come out. And LA's like that in my mind. People who have any of that dormant blind ambition, it can easily come out in that context. Cable news is nothing more than entertainment, except for the international version of CNN and perhaps the BBC. Now, a big part of Donald Trump's campaign strategy has been to try and undermine the legitimacy of the election. Then, if he loses, he can just dismiss the whole thing as corrupt and claim victory anyway. You know, actors say, there are no bad roles, there are only bad actors. Well, comedians, because they're also writers, believe that there are in fact bad roles. We tune into news companies for them to give us some sense of grounded assessment of what the truth is. I think what should happen is companies should calculate how much money they're getting from people who are celebrating Christmas and provide exactly that much amount of Merry Christmas, because that is exactly how I would want any type of religious holiday to be celebrated. There's an argument that private debt, in some way, is creating indentured servants in our country, but public debt does not do that. In fact, public debt does the exact opposite. It relieves private debt. There's been this sort of attitude in media in the past in this country that it's not our job to fall on one side or the other. But what I'm suggesting is that in this day and age, there is no deciding not to fall on one side of the other. You're going to be on a side, so you've got to lean in and choose the right one. But I will say this, look, I don't think that there's anyone in the country who thinks that impeachment's going to lead to Donald Trump leaving office. The point is, you need to put down a marker as to who is accountable, what the president can get away with. I mean, what was really interesting is that, you know, Ted Cruz put out this ad with little kids saying that Donald Trump essentially is pretending to be a Republican, which is a little bit odd because Ted Cruz has not been the biggest Republican Party booster, right? I quit law school in 1990 and started doing stand-up in Boston. The mainstream is not the mainstream anymore. We're a lot more niched in our media. Listen, as far as the war on Christmas goes, I feel like we should be waging a war on Christmas. The success that I have in sitcoms comes from the fact that 60% of the writers are Jewish guys in their early to late 40s. Donald Trump's own intelligence is publicly saying that Russia is actively trying to help him and hurt Joe Biden. I feel like I don't mind acting in a sitcom because it pays well and is good exposure, but I don't feel like, comedically, what I have to say I can say on a show that needs to draw 14 million each week. I look like a very nice, benign Jewish man boy. I think what happens normally in a narrative film is that the camera constructs the reality. My influences as a comedian and filmmaker are Albert Brooks, Lenny Bruce, Woody Allen, Andy Kaufman, and John Cassavetes. I believe there should be enforcement and redevelopment of antitrust laws that fully regulate the media. Mike Cernovich is not everything that's wrong with society, but he is definitely the low-hanging fruit of what's wrong with society. The days where you could just step back and not pick a side are over. I wanted to do something I could show my grandkids and say that this is my comedic vision. With comedic actors, you can write one joke or two jokes, sample dialogue, and they have the capacity to extrapolate. I'm not of the ilk that there's something immoral about doing an unfunny sitcom. It just gets boring and unchallenging. Ben Laden is living in the United States, and he has blonde hair. He's probably got some type of eating disorder, and he drinks too much, and then occasionally writes an op-ed under the name and Coulter. There are a lot of things about the TV industry that make you try to change who you are to fit into a certain mold. Because there is something psychologically wrong with you on some level if you want to be on TV, if the only way you can fulfill yourself is by literally going from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions. When I came home, I was no longer the pariah who had dropped out of law school. I had been on TV, and everybody wanted to know not only what being on TV was like, but what I thought about world events. Suddenly, there was some value to what I was saying. That's bizarre. Either you're a political comedian or you're a stand-up. Just talking about politics isn't enough. People who talk about airplane food, you don't call them airplane comedians. There has been an attempt to pull in a more cable mentality to the big networks, from NBC hiring Scott Sassa from TNT, to Fox hiring Herzog from Comedy Central. I think there's a real hunger out there for new voices who will speak more truth to power and who are less ensconced in the establishment machine. I don't have great thoughts about a lot of Republican candidates. I mean, Donald Trump has been able, because of Mitch McConnell, to seat more circuit court judges almost than Barack Obama did in 8 years. I don't have any insight to Donald Trump that anyone else doesn't. You know, I'm glad that what I want doesn't necessarily always come true.